Hey everybody, back here again for another episode of Cloud Education, here with my good friend, Daryl Hunter, and obviously myself being Mike Erps, back at you here with another great topic. We at least hope so, specifically today around the sort of life cycle and brief but long history of Microsoft Teams. There's been a lot of things that have happened over the past year or so, and we've seen it start from a very small beta type product to a real legit GA product today, as Microsoft has really put a lot of effort into the development around Teams and some of the things specifically in our world, Daryl, around moving features from Skype for Business and what we're used to in the past into Teams. So with that, we want to hop into giving you guys a little bit of our recap around what's happened with Teams and some of the things that we feel are really important to note, and then maybe some things that are up and coming here in the next days and weeks as Microsoft continues to roll out some things in Teams. So first and foremost, Daryl, we've seen a lot of improvements in Teams. We're using Teams on a day-to-day basis, but maybe you can share some insight as to what that history looks like and some of the things that people should be aware of that have happened over the past year or so.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really great topic, right? I mean, obviously I live in Teams. I know you do too. We're recording this video in Teams. I think it's important for people to know, right? It's not just a tool for IM and communication and collaboration. We're able to do this type of content inside the product. Not everyone that's watching this episode of Cloud Education has been following along the Microsoft story around communication for years like we have. I know many of you are very, very new and you're just trying to figure it all out. Real quick history, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but the Microsoft Teams product went into a preview phase in early 2017, and it caught fire. It caught a lot of really just ground floor excitement around a product with communication and collaboration and some video features and chat and emojis and Giphies and all that stuff, right? It became a thing. Last year at Microsoft Ignite, so 1 year ago at Microsoft Ignite, there was this trailblazing announcement that Teams is the vision for the future of Microsoft intelligent communication, right? And that sounds like some marketing words, right? Intelligent communication, unified communication, universal communication, right? We've heard it all. But really what that means is in the first 6 months, Microsoft saw some amazing things happening, right? And so they just wanted to kind of capitalize on that and build around it for the future. At Enterprise Connect, just this spring, Mike and I had an opportunity to be there and be in our booth to hear a bunch of announcements and meet many of you. That first year of Teams happened. There was a birthday celebration. Like in the booth, remember? They had like cake and like, streamers. It was like really, really cool. A couple 100,000 organizations use Teams in its first year. I have some numbers written down, not all of which are important, but Teams is being used in that first year in 181 markets around the globe. 3 million teams created in that first year, 39 languages, right? That's not the type of statistics for a tool that Microsoft is not investing heavily in and really banking on the future of their communications platform. And then obviously now in 2018 through the summer and leading up to Ignite this fall, the door's open, right? It's going to be really interesting as we have our discussion today and then into the future weeks. But Teams is an exciting thing that Microsoft's doing. We'll sort of level set a little bit of the history about it. But more importantly, the conversations at AudioCodes, and I'm sure many of the ecosystem partners around the world are honing in on a lot of Microsoft Teams topics. And I was hoping, Mike, you might be able to talk about maybe some of those common discussions or maybe some patterns that you're seeing in how it went from what is Teams to how do we actually use this thing?
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember when we first started using Teams last year, it was something that we just did as a sort of a silo and, really just wanted to play with the new technology, right? I mean, it was like the new thing. But it's really evolved into something that really does help at least, us internally and, hopefully as things expand externally as well, to collaborate on a different level. But, some of the things specifically that we've heard a lot about over the past number of months and sort of the summer of teams, if you will. Really, I've been laser focused on direct routing, which we talked about in the previous cloud education episode, as well as things like the native teams devices. So the concept, as you mentioned earlier, intelligent communications, where you have that similar experience across any platform that you're using. It's a concept that has started with Windows, and now it's moving into the actual applications as well, with Office and being able to leverage things on your mobile device, your PC, your tablets, or e-readers, whatever they might be anymore, your smartwatches. I mean, the list goes on. You know, it's a different world, and the evolution continues there. But specifically around direct routing, which we touched on in the past, we've seen a lot of uptake on how people are adopting that. It's really a nice solution that Microsoft's brought to the market. Really simplifies a lot of things that sort of have created heartburn in the past in those hybrid environments, giving a lot of flexibility. And then the other thing, which is obviously near and dear for you, Daryl, is the native Teams devices. Obviously, that's something we are laser focused on, and you're specifically focused on. But you know, having the ability to take that same intelligent communications concept and bring that to the desk, that last 3 feet that you focus on, has been really important. So there's been a lot of things going on, but one of the more recent things that has sort of hit the press, if you will, is a concept or term called feature parity. And I know that this is, you know, a time where there's a lot of conversation in the community about that and what that all means. So I'm kind of curious, you know, Daryl, from your perspective, you're a big social media guy. You obviously follow Microsoft just like I do. We have a lot of conversations with their development teams and marketing teams, et cetera. What are you hearing in the community about this feature parity thing, and what do you really see that meaning for everybody?
And, you know, it's so interesting. Feature parity is on one hand kind of a dirty word, right? So when people think of parity, they think of same, right? And that's not necessarily the case here, right? Parity, as the announcements came out like Inspire, like just last month, right, at the partner conference in Vegas. You know, Microsoft made this announcement that Teams is now at parity with Skype for Business. And so, unfortunately, many of our colleagues and our friends dove into social media about, well, what about this feature? What about this function? Skype does this, Teams doesn't do that. How dare you say parity? And unfortunately, as smart as these people are, as we are, I think we missed it. You know, in Microsoft's standpoint, it's not just a one-to-one replacement for Skype for Business. That's not what parity means. It's a different way to communicate. It's a different way to collaborate. Being a voice guy, right, I focus on those voice functions. I don't necessarily focus in on governance and compliance and security and the chat, right? Those are important for how I work every day, but that's not really where I focus in that last 3 feet, right? But as Microsoft really is selling Teams as not just a PBX replacement, but the future and vision for intelligent communication, I think it's just important to say out loud, don't expect a fully lined up feature card, right, where you've got traditional telco over here, Avaya or Cisco or Nortel or Picatel, whatever, you know, with a bunch of headings with like checkboxes and X marks and frowny faces and smiley faces. Yeah. That's not what Microsoft's doing. And I think it's just important to really land that message. It is a new way to communicate, and it's a new way to collaborate. And in fact, I'm going to read a quick announcement. You know, Mary Jo Foley wrote quite a bit about this when there was a lot of stuff, and she's a well-respected member of our field, right? I can never say it quite like she can, but Teams has reached feature parity with Skype for Business, delivering public roadmap for messaging and meetings and calling in the cloud, right? That is a statement that was made, but feature parity means engineering effort and work was required to support the roadmap. Mm-hmm. Did you catch that? If the roadmap is we are going to be able to communicate in a new way and we build a tool to communicate in a new way, we've done it. But that does not mean all those features are on every client, every tenant, every data location all over the world to be immediately consumed. It's a big, big shift. And I think that's just really important. Did you have any particular thoughts on that? I mean, I know that's what we've talked about, but is that landing well with the people you're communicating with?
Well, I think it's a different world in a lot of ways, right? We also need to remember that this is cloud, right?
Right,
So
for sure.
cloud is something that developed and going through their development cycles, then it's going into testing cycles through the community. So using the term tap and things like that, where there are partners and customers out there that are getting early access to these features. We're a part of that in some shape or fashion in most cases. So we're able to see some of these really interesting features before they're considered GA. They exist. Maybe they need to have some final tweaks and go through that process. But I think really what the more confusion is, one, as you mentioned, sort of the checklist, the old adage of sort of, I don't say checklist selling, but checklist feature for feature, going down and circling a particular box or, whatever. That's not a thing anymore, right? This is a vision that Microsoft is looking to achieve and changing the game as to how we communicate. The way that you and I know of making a phone from the past, where you pick up an analog phone, you dial 7 digits, 10 digits, or whatever it might be in other areas of the world. That's not really a thing anymore. All I know is I'm calling Daryl. So I'm typing in Daryl's name and hitting a button, and somehow on the other end, your phone rings, right? So the way that we communicate is fundamentally different, and I think that's a challenge for some people, right? I mean, some people like to continue to have that same experience and don't want to necessarily, alter that path. So with that expectations and then the, potentially a little bit of confusion as far as the rolling out of the features, the development teams have done what they need to do, but it hasn't necessarily hit the streets yet in some cases. So that's definitely a different sort of philosophy, where in the past with the deployment of Skype server as an example, or Exchange server, et cetera, you control those cycles
Right.
as when you want to start testing and such. Whereas with the cloud, it's a little bit differently, because Microsoft is making those decisions and ultimately putting that into play, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So one more quick second. I'm sorry to cut you
Yeah,
off. One more
go
quick
for it.
second.
Yeah.
Along with Parity came like an announcement. I think it was last week, maybe. So by the time this post, maybe a few weeks ago, that the roadmap is complete. Same conversation, lather, rinse, repeat. But I think it's going to set us up really nicely in this season as we head towards Microsoft Ignite. Being that flagship conference this year. I'll be there. I know that you'll be there. We'd love to see some of you all. Walk us through that. What should we expect coming up at Ignite?
Yeah, it's interesting, because it seems like there's going to be quite a bit of announcements, especially in the voice piece of the Teams world. That's going to be super interesting, whether it be direct routing, native Teams devices, things like that. And then, I'm personally excited to get in front of some of these folks that we don't necessarily see face to face all the time, and have that conversation of, Microsoft, what are you folks thinking? And, what's the perspective that you have there? How are you, addressing these types of conversations? But also, as you mentioned, having our presence there, you and I, we're going to be able to talk to people in our community, whether they be the partner ecosystem, the MVPs, especially our customers, our end users that are actually consuming these things, and really understanding, what the impact is for them, how they're adopting them, the new features, and sort of their feedback, so that as we're looking into taking it back out of the industry side and looking at it from our organization, what are our next steps? How do we align with that and help to make that solution a real thing for everybody? So I'm definitely excited. I don't know if you have any particulars that you're looking to get out of it, but I would say at least that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a great time for me just through the ecosystem, right? We have many friends that watch these cloud education episodes and do similar talks like this, right? I can't name them by name, but we all know who they are. So getting a chance to be at Ignite and obviously wear an AudioCodes shirt and talk about where we're going, but more importantly, being able to see where Microsoft is going and just work together as an ecosystem to make the product better. And I think that's ultimately the really great thing about the community and Microsoft Teams, right? It wouldn't have caught fire in a couple hundred organizations as quickly if there weren't those right people talking about a different way to communicate. I think Microsoft has it right. I know Ignite's coming up soon. I'm looking forward to seeing our partners and especially our end customers to really have a chance to meet you and talk about it just exactly like you said. And it's been a great topic to talk about today. I think it's really timely, not just because I like Teams, because I'm a fan, but man, leading into this new season, I think it's just a really timely conversation.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, one of the things I just want to sort of conclude on a thought is, as you go into these discussions, and if you are lucky enough to be going to Ignite and have these discussions with folks in the industry or Microsoft folks, just keep an open mind. There's evolution of technology. There's different ways to do things these days. Having that little blinking button for that one analog line that you choose, or whichever in the voice community, that's just not a thing anymore, right? So definitely keep an open mind, folks, when you are having these discussions. It's not to say that you shouldn't have expectations based on what we know from the past, but at the same time, just keep that in mind, that things are changing. So with that, Daryl, appreciate the time as always. We're certainly excited in the coming days to head to Ignite down in Orlando. We're certainly hopeful to share some insights that we hear throughout the week there at Microsoft Ignite. But with that, Daryl, thanks again. Appreciate it. And everybody out there, we really appreciate you tuning in, and we look forward to the next episode. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.